Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron Channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, I'm going to talk about abbreviated training and if it is some magical, mystical way for naturals to explode into their muscle gains. Before I get into that topic, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. The best topic ideas I turn into videos just like this. Also, if you need a phone consultation with the big, hairy, ugly dude, there is a link down below. You can hop on that. We can set up a time to talk. We can talk about your goals, iron out a few things. I offer that as a service, so check it out down below. All right, commercial done. Let's talk about abbreviated training. I always encourage you guys to leave comments about topics you'd like me to cover, and one of you did, so I appreciate that. And that was about abbreviated training. So I'm going to dive into what it is. Before I do so, at some point in time, I don't know if it was in the 80s or 90s, as a backlash to the steroid-using bodybuilders or muscleheads, the concept developed that if we switch to abbreviated training back to something that was a little bit better for naturals, that we would explode, that we would just, see better muscle gains. If we stopped training like the steroid-using bodybuilders and got back to our roots of abbreviated training, we would see better results. Not obviously not everybody is like that, and I'm being a bit facetious, but you would see folks hop on this style of abbreviated training and make all sorts of claims that they made the best progress of their life. I have no doubt they did, and I'm going to address that in this video. All right, let's get into things a little bit. When we're establishing sets per week, when we're talking about abbreviated training or higher volume training or normal training, it's a gray area, right? It's up for debate. In my research, and I pulled up 4 articles on abbreviated training, I found that on average, and people, if you have a differing opinion on this, please let me know. But I found on average for these 4 articles that the abbreviated folks were doing about 24 to 30 working sets per week. Some of these programs were 4 days per week. Some of these programs were 2 days per week. The 4-day-a-week program I looked at had like 9 sets one day, 6 sets the next, 9 sets one day, 6 sets the next. That was actually the highest volume of any of the abbreviated training programs, but it was still only 30 sets per week. Now, high volume training, obviously that's going to depend on the individual. In my book, anything above 20 sets per day is really a little bit on the high end because it's hard to sustain the proper training intensity, meaning just going all out to the degree you need to see good progress when you're above 20 sets per day. For me, about 16 sets, 18 sets, depending on how much isolation work I do at the end or pump work I do at the end, is about it. After that, I have to tap out. For me, the low end volume per week I'd like to see is 50 sets. The high end would be about 80 sets per week. And this is not a rule, it's a general guideline. And generally the sweet spot is somewhere around 65 sets per week. That's about four training sessions of about 16 sets. Not a rule, again, not a rule. You can go a little bit higher. You can do a little bit more pump work. You can do a little bit more volume. That's just an average guideline. The high volume people tend to be, 30. I'd say once you get above 30 sets per day, super high volume, you're at like 120 sets per week. That's pretty extreme. So we have abbreviated, high volume, which we're not too worried about here, and more normal training. You can see the abbreviated folks are about at half of what I consider to be a good volume for most of us. All right, so the super high volume of sets per day, about 30 plus sets per day, could be 25 sets plus per day, doesn't really matter. It's an arbitrary number. Abbreviated training, 24 to 30 sets a week. Now, the thing with abbreviated training and why a lot of women who switch over, I haven't really seen any women use abbreviated training, but I just want to be gender friendly because it's the era we live in, right? So regardless of what your gender is, the thing we see is that when people switch over to an abbreviated training programs generally have a very defined progression approach, okay? They're not like these generic muscle building magazine slop programs that are just like a to-do list. Do bench press, 3 sets of 8 by 10, and most of them, you've seen them, don't have a defined progression approach, and really that's like taking the balls off something. You take the balls off, it's really hard to reproduce gains, if you know what I'm saying. So these abbreviated training programs generally have a defined progression approach, and therefore when people switch over to them, they generally will see results, because it might be the first time in their life that they focused on a defined progression approach over an extended period of time. So that's basically why you see somebody hopping on an abbreviated program and saying, I saw good results, therefore this must be the way, the truth, and the light. You know what I'm saying? Or life, or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying. All right, so abbreviated training will work for those with no previous solid focus on progression. It will work. Abbreviated training is not optimal volume for most. Volume, which is basically sets times reps times your weight, the tonnage, but the sets times reps that are going to create a time under tension, okay? How much time you actually are under the bar, pressing, pushing, rowing, all that kind of good stuff. Abbreviated training creates a suboptimal time under tension. You need a certain amount, a reasonable amount of tension to encourage the muscle building process in concert with progressive overload. Abbreviated training reduces that time under tension dramatically, and therefore over time it's going to reduce the rate of gain. Yes, it can produce gains, but it is not optimal for most, and it certainly does not create an optimal time under tension environment. Time under tension is something we tend to focus on way too much, but it's a byproduct of proper volume. It's not something you need to chase by slowing down your sets, if that makes sense. All right. Abbreviated training is an okay option for aging lifters or someone that just wants 10 to 20 pounds of muscle tops. What do I mean by that? A lot of times guys will come to me over the age of 40, 50, 60, even in their 70s. They want to know what kind of program they should use. They're not after maximum amount of muscle mass, most of them, maybe 90%. They just want to pack some muscle mass onto their frame. If you are an aging lifter, or someone that does not want to pack an incredible amount of muscle mass on their frame, you just want 10, 15, maybe 20 pounds over the course of your life, abbreviated training is probably a solid option for you, because you can run it over the course of 5 or 10 years, put on some muscle mass if you have a focus on progressive overload, and it's probably going to treat your body a little bit better because you're not doing that incredible amount of volume. Your rate of gains is probably going to be consistent, but it's probably going to be slower than if you went all out with a little bit more reasonable volume. So it's very easy for folks to get on, fitness channels and get on Instagram and talk crap about one style of training over the other. There are some reasons to do abbreviated training. For those of you that are after optimal, massive amounts of muscle naturally, you want to get close to your natural potential, this is the slow bus, okay? That's the slow bus. It's going to take you a long time to get there. You can probably get there, but it's going to take you a long time. You really have to make those sets count. And I'm not certain even then that you can get close to your natural potential with this style of training. But for the aging lifter, the average fitness fanatic who just wants 10 to 20 pounds of muscle mass, this can work, but you need to really sell out to the best possible exercise selection and a progressive overload. If you're going to do abbreviated training, you need to make those sets count, and you make those sets count with a good exercise selection, not shying away from the big hitters, and a rock solid, relentless pursuit of progressive overload. You need to get a lot stronger than you are now with those sets. So guys, hope this video has been of some help. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. If you made it this far in this video and have yet to subscribe to my channel, please do. I'd appreciate the support. So guys, as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.